Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council regular meeting on June 3rd, 2024. City Council thanks you for being part of your city government. At meetings, the City Council takes formal action on items, holds public hearings, and conducts other business of the city. Agendas are available on the city's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. For those who are back here on that small table as you enter to your right, there are also agendas there. This meeting is being televised live on PSC TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and in Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and on GoToWebinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website as well. Lastly, the public may submit their comments or ask questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. So with that, Ms. Clerk, can we get a call to order?
Council members, Barajas,
Present.
Blaisdell,
Present.
Grimm,
Here.
Harpster,
Present.
Perales,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne,
Present.
and Mayor Serrano.
I am here. We're all here. If you all can join with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, which is our consent agenda. Now, all items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call as one motion as listed on the agenda. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by a council member, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. So with that, we've got several items on this. We'll start off with item letter A, approval of the meeting minutes for the May 17th, May 20th, and May 28th, 2024 meetings. Item B, bills and communications, approving claims in the total amount of $15,305,898.42. And item C, resolution number 4454, Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office Community Outdoor Athletic Facilities Grant. Item D, as in Delta, resolutions number 4455 and 4456, approval for applications to the Public Works Board for pre-construction and construction funding of the Butterfield WTP improvements and Reservoir Zone 2. Item E, resolution number 4457, project acceptance for the 4th Avenue water meter replacement project. And finally, item F, resolution number 4458, project acceptance for East Urban Growth Area, the UGA, expansion sewer local improvement district number 152, phase 1 project.
And Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Got a motion?
Second.
And we got a second from Ms. Blaisdell. Ms. Clerk.
Alrighty. Councilmember Blaisdell,
Yes.
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimm,
Yes.
Councilmember Harpster,
Yes.
Councilmember Perales,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne,
Yes.
and Mayor Serrano.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. With that, we got proclamations and acknowledgements. With none listed, we'll move on to item number 6. This is our opportunity for public comment. The public may address council on items unless it relates to a scheduled public hearing. This item is provided to allow the opportunity to bring items to the attention of City Council or to express an opinion on an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate for the posing of the questions with the expectation of an immediate result or response. Some questions may require consideration by council over time and after a deliberative process with input from a number of different sources. Some staff are best directed to staff. Some questions are best directed to staff who have access to specific information. Citizen comments will normally be limited to 3 minutes each by the mayor, and you can see the clock here to my right, your left, and it does have the green, yellow, red for notice. Those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments or submit written information for council consideration outside of formal meetings. Lastly, when called upon, please state your name and city or county of residence into the microphone before your comments. So with that, we are open for public comment. Again, not relating to specific public hearings. We do have a handful of those. So if you have one on a public hearing, and that would be item 8A, it appears, which is our transportation improvement plan. So anything aside from that is open at this time. If you have a comment on the transportation improvement plan, we'll hold it to the hearing. So Ms. Mahoney. Push the button. We're good.
I'm Mary Mahoney, floodplain resident at 50117 West Pearl. This is a file number 4477 for a pit bull named Belle, who was sent to WSU for research by Tri-City Animal Control Director Ben Zegan. And this file is for the record. On April 1st, 2019, the Pasco City Council meeting, Pasco City Attorney Lee Kerr stated that the WSU contract with Tri-City Animal Control and/or the Animal Control Authority, that the contract had been terminated. Mr. Kerr stated on April 1st, 2019, he would provide a copy of that termination agreement. No termination agreement has been provided. Also, Mr. Kerr stated there would be no redrafting of the potentially dangerous and dangerous animal ordinances for Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland to include due process protections for pet owners. That is, pet owners' rights for a notice and a hearing in court for their pets that have been declared a danger or potentially danger. Without a termination agreement of the Washington State University contract, the City of Pasco is in violation of the Animal Welfare Act and possibly the Clean Water Act, those violations. And all city attorneys, Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, regarding due process, are in violation of their oaths to uphold the Constitution. Further, constitutional violations, eco-crimes, harassment, retaliation claims, RICO violations, and more apply to the City of Pasco and their actions in wiping out our 8 floodplain American bald eagles and the floodplain itself, the habitat for humans and the planet in general. These comments tonight are for the record and will serve to put the City of Pasco on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Mr. Mitchell, I believe.
Thank you. My name is Chad Mitchell. I'm a resident of the city of Richland. And I'm also, more importantly tonight, a member of the president of the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club of Benton and Franklin counties. Mayor Serrano, members of the council, I'd like to also introduce you to another board member here tonight with me, Daniel Salceda. So the first, appreciate staff. We've worked together with staff on helping us get some money allocated through the grant program that was previously allocated, and you'll be dealing with that tonight. And so we wanted to express our appreciation to staff for working with us on that. Wanted to express appreciation to council for your consideration of that. We have 706 of our youth that we served at that facility last year. We have a long-standing relationship with the city of Pasco, and we look forward to continuing to serve those youth in a safer and better environment than what they have right now with the help of the city, and also public funds and other private funds that we're going to bring to help better serve our kids. So just want to express our appreciation on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club of Benton and Franklin counties, and also all the kids we serve. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional public comments? Miss?
Hey, good evening. My name is Amber Bruce. I'm a resident of Pasco. And it's the beginning of Pride Month, so it seems appropriate to read some excerpts and quotes from James Baldwin, American novelist and activist for civil rights and gay liberation. In an open letter to the Born Again in 1979, he wrote, "The text comes from the New Testament, Matthew 25:40. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. I speak now as the grandson of a slave, a direct descendant of a born-again Christian, and as one of the born-again. My conversion came high-priced. I belong to Jesus Christ. I was instructed to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit those in prison. I am far indeed from my youth and from my father's house, but I have not forgotten these instructions, and I pray upon my soul that I never will. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. That is a hard saying. It is hard to live with that. It is a merciless description of our responsibility for one another. It is that hard light under which one makes the moral choice. That the Western world has forgotten that such a thing as the moral choice exists. My history, my flesh, and my soul bear witness. The state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. It was created for the salvation of the Western interests. This is what is becoming clear. The Palestinians have been paying for the British colonial policy of divide and rule, and for Europe's guilty Christian conscience for more than 30 years. 76 years now, in 2024. Finally, there is absolutely no hope of establishing peace in what Europe so arrogantly calls the Middle East without dealing with the Palestinians. In a later interview, Baldwin stated, "We've yet to understand that if I'm starving, you're in danger. People think that my danger makes them safe. They're in trouble." The same applies with Israelis and Palestinians. Israelis can never be safe while Palestinians are oppressed. The security of Palestinians and Israelis and the peace of the whole Middle East is intertwined. This interconnectedness spans the globe, giving every one of us a responsibility to our fellow humans. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Whether it's migrant children exploited in the fields of central Washington, or trans children being bullied in our schools, or Palestinian children being starved, bombed, and terrorized, as Baldwin wrote elsewhere, the children are always ours, every single one of them, all over the globe, and I'm beginning to suspect that whoever is incapable of recognizing this may be incapable of morality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Annalisa Ely, and I'm a resident of Benton County. Gaza is starving, not because of logistics, not because of a lack of supply, but because the mountains of aid waiting at the border are being left to rot in the sun. Israel has decided to starve 2.3 million people to death. In some areas of Gaza, the average person is only eating 245 calories a day, less than a can of beans. Malnutrition is spreading at a record pace among children, according to the World Food Program. More than 90% of young children and pregnant and breastfeeding women are subsisting on 2 or fewer food groups, mainly bread, with no access to fruit, vegetables, milk, or proteins. Almost half of Gaza's population of 2.3 million is under 18, and the effects of starvation may follow those who survive for the rest of their lives. Their brains and bodies without nutrients needed for growth cannot properly develop, leading to health problems such as poor eyesight and learning difficulties later in life. Nusa Awad, mother to triplets Malik, Kader, and Mustafa, who were born last August, said, "At this age, a child should weigh 8 kilos. They weigh 2 kilos. They don't have thighs yet. At this stage, they are supposed to be crawling and preparing to walk. And now you can see the state they're in. Are these the arms of an 8-month-old child? It's death there, death, death. Death in the literal meaning of the word. Israel has consistently targeted aid for months, both physically and politically. Israeli officials planted the now debunked claims of UNRWA staff being military operatives of Hamas, which led to the mass defunding of the largest humanitarian aid organization operating in the region. The targeting and murder of aid workers from World Central Kitchen also led to the suspension of their efforts due to safety concerns. Israel has repeatedly attacked aid trucks, including the bombing of one in March, killing 9 Palestinians. Just days earlier, occupation forces opened fire on a crowd attempting to retrieve aid in the Flower Massacre, which saw 118 murdered and 760 injured. Gazans now make up 80% of all people facing famine or catastrophic hunger worldwide. Before October 7th, Gaza was described by many human rights organizations as the world's largest open-air prison. But what we now see is that Israel has made the world's largest death camp. Please take a stand against this atrocity today by condemning genocide and calling for sanctions and a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Going once, going twice. Looks like we're gonna close our public comment here. And before I do that, I do want to announce the presence of our wonderful Mr. Torres, our translator. If you can raise your hand, he's a celebrity by now. I think he's almost as commonplace as council members. If you do need translation service, he's here. Got the headsets and what have you. So if there is need, just reach out to him. He's back there. He does a great job. Not that I understand him, but he's a nice guy at least. So with that, moving on to item number 7, we're going to move on to reports from committees and/or officers, and this is our opportunity for council members to provide their reports on activities that have gone on the last week or so. Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at McClintock Elementary today for Career Day, and I was invited to come and visited with 6 different 5th grade classes and talked about my role here on City Council. The first thing I told them is this shouldn't be a career, nor should there be any career politicians. Talked to them about the Constitution, how we don't get our rights from the Constitution or the government. It's to secure and protect our rights against the government, and talked about the different forms of Pasco government and roles and what we do. And it was really, really fun time with the young people and kind of the civics lesson we had there. And then I also joined fellow council member Harpster and Blaisdell this afternoon with staff meeting about our the TIP and answering our questions, trying to learn more. And that was also just a really good time, just kind of grasping this whole 6-year plan more. And so I appreciated their time, and council member Harpster and Blaisdell's also being involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended it's kind of an ad hoc group of individuals, but it's for the emergency 911 sales tax that's going to perhaps be voted on by our county commissioners. And so I attended a meeting last week at the sheriff's office, and we just kind of talked about the presentation that was given and residents' concerns and kind of just the overall presentation of that tax that may be voted on here in the near future. So.
Thank you, Mr. Prowse. Mr. Harpster.
I attended the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber of Commerce luncheon on Wednesday with a few staff members, and heard reports from some of our legislators on this most recent session. Nothing new that we haven't already heard in the last couple of months, but still good to work on building rapport with them. And also, not as a council member, just Saturday went to the Franklin County Historical Museum, and would encourage everybody to do the same. Very affordable rates. I could have spent several hours there if my kids hadn't gotten bored. But they've done a really good job redoing it over the last year or two, and would just encourage folks to take advantage of that. We went to the farmers market and spent some time there, and then over to the museum. So it was nice to just hang out in downtown Pasco and take advantage of all the good that's going on there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Harpster. Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, I attended an event here at the City Hall where we had it was around 50 students came in, and they got a tour of the facilities, and then they came in here and they elected council members and got to play mayor. And so I was actually, as acting staff with former mayor Matt Watkins, and my role was Richa Siddell, and so I got to play her. And of course, the council wanted to spend on the aquatic center, and I had to rein them in. So it was real good. I had to tell them, hey, you guys can't spend way over budget, but they all wanted more slides and everything. So it was good to chance to act like staff and tell the council, yeah, I can't spend that kind of money. So it was fun.
Thank you, Mr. Milne. I too attended that, and I'd like to thank Mr. Watkins for his time, both served here on council as well as continued exercise of his experience in the community and sharing his insights. It was a great I caught the morning half, and the kids weren't as happy as maybe your group was. It sounds they spent a lot of time electing themselves, or however you want to, electing from their peers. So that was a great event. So thanks, Matt, if you're watching. I know he doesn't always get a chance to catch it. Wednesday morning, I had the opportunity to head out to the federal building to have a little bit of a briefing on the high level on the Hanford site, some of the things that are forthcoming with the projects they're working on, where they've kind of made it in the cleanup progress to date, and some of the goals for 2024 and 2025. Obviously, with an election season coming up, there's obviously a lot of questions that are kind of hanging over what may happen or not happen. But they do have a clear plan, and they do have a clear budget, at least for now. And it was good to hear that. But we also spent time talking about Hanford fire season, and it's very clear that team is prepared, and they've got their mutual aids ready to rock and roll. Good thing I see our chief nodding his head, not in disapproval or in shock. That's good. But it was clear that they have a team that's set up, and they're actually doing things like disking and trying to make the fire breaks, and lightning strikes are really not in our control. So there's a lot that could happen out there, and anyone that's lived in this area for a while knows that every season there's something that's kind of unforeseen but foreseen, and fortunately they're prepared. So it's good to hear that update. So with that, we do have in item 7. In addition, I don't see any other lights. In addition to these council member reports, we do have item 7B, which is a presentation on the Benton County Emergency Services update. So I'm glad I could kick it into that right there for you, Chief.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to provide a presentation that will give an overview of Benton County Emergency Services. Tonight's presentation might run a little bit longer than normal, but we wanted to make sure that we provide the information in a thorough format, so we get all questions answered. In order to help deliver this information accurately, we brought in 2 guest speakers. Mr. Drew Florence, he's the Assistant City Manager for the City of Richland, and Mr. Jay Atwood, he is the Executive Director for Benton County Emergency Services. So with that, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having us. I'm Drew Florence, the Assistant City Manager with the City of Richland. The City of Richland is currently the operating jurisdiction for Benton County Emergency Services, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that means here in a little bit for our presentation. But we are making the rounds. We have visited City of Richland, City of Kennewick, and then we are hitting some of the other members of the BCS board here in the future. The goal here is to provide just kind of an overview of what Benton County Emergency Services is, and maybe some of the challenges we're currently facing, as well as where we're going. So a little bit of history on me, as I've been the Assistant City Manager for almost 3 years. Prior to that, I spent 17 years in law enforcement, retired as a captain with Richland PD, and have been enjoying this job since. And I'll let Jay introduce himself, and then we'll get going.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us. I'm Jay Atwood, as Kevin pointed out. I'm the Executive Director of BCS. I have been with BCS for the last couple of years. I came from the City of Spokane. I'm a retired Deputy Fire Chief from the City of Spokane. 25 plus years of service in public safety, and a lot of it in emergency communication specifically. So here to hopefully help out and mitigate some of the issues that have accumulated over the years, and lead the organization into the future.
So real quick, just this is kind of what we're hoping to cover today. Is what the purpose is to explain again kind of how BCS came to be, what the current state is, what Richland's role is as the administrative jurisdiction, and then some big decisions that we currently have. And then also we want to have all of the member agencies. There's 11 total member agencies with Benton County Emergency Services, and all of their governing boards have varying levels of understanding because of kind of the different relationship of it not being a standalone agency. So we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and has access to the same information for when those big decisions come. Everybody's equally informed. And then a lot of the issues we're going to talk about tonight are regional challenges. And those challenges are things that we're all going to have to come together and continue to work together on to resolve. So real quick, I'm going to go through this older part of the history just fairly quickly, but essentially since 1991 was kind of the first effort at regional dispatch centers in this area. There was an interlocal agreement in 1993 that kind of created the emergency dispatch center and brought in the Benton County side of emergency management. And at that time, there were only Benton County operator or agencies as part of that. It expanded in 1996 with the city of West Richland, Benton City, and Prosser. And the new building there was formed and deeded to Benton County Emergency Management around that time from the city of Richland. The fire protection districts joined in 2002, and then in 2009, the interlocal agreement was amended to provide governance for the then 800 megahertz digital radio system. And then in 2012, Benton PUD, which is an odd partner to have, but they joined because their technology at the time is they were utilizing some of the same radio towers to communicate with their staff, and it made sense for them to use some of the infrastructure that we had in order to be able to communicate. And so in 2014, the Benton County Emergency Services Board, they hired Skeens, which is a local government management consultant. And the intent behind hiring them was to have them come in. There was some early discussion about regionalizing in both Benton and Franklin County and bringing all emergency dispatch services under one house. And they were asked to kind of draft an interlocal and start moving towards Benton County Emergency Services being the same or an independent legal entity. Due to a series of, historical events, that never happened. And we've been working in small measures towards that, I think, since that time. But there was no action taken. And in 2017, there was kind of a pivot. And instead of it becoming a separate legal entity, that is when we had a transition agreement that brought Pasco and Franklin County to be members of Benton County Emergency Services via an interlocal agreement. And both the city of Pasco and Franklin County bought in for a $500,000 agency buy-in. In 2018, that ILA was amended again, and that was part of that transition agreement to where it was finally finalized. There is an administrative fee that the city of Richland collects, and it was originally 5%. That was changed to 7% at that time. And then some of the more recent events in 2020, the 2018 ILA amendment was specific to a radio tower that needed to be built in the Benton City area over in Red Mountain. There are a lot of Benton City issues currently, even still, because that radio tower is nearing final construction. And there's some dead zones, for lack of better terms, where the Benton County deputies can't get out on their radios, and there's been some significant incidents that have happened as a result. And so that will be remedied here later on this year, but that's been a very lengthy process that Jay has helped us to finish. Part of the direction that the board went in around that time is to bring in several consultants, which I'll go through on the next slide. But one of the goals that they set was to hire an executive director. And so in 2022, Jay Atwood was hired and brings a wealth of experience in emergency communications and consolidation, in taking an emergency communication center to a standalone agency, and has been through that process and all the challenges that go with it. And then most recently, we had to open the interlocal agreement for a radio project. I'll call it phase 1 of a radio project, and it's the microwave radio communication system. And Jay's going to talk about specifically what that is here a little bit later in the presentation and how that differs from the future and upcoming larger radio project that we're going to have to embark in. But as part of that interlocal, we had to identify the current interlocal as it was. It allowed and had funds for maintenance and operation of infrastructure, but it didn't address how we can acquire new new infrastructure. And so essentially what we had to do was go through and identify how anything that was going to be purchased was funded. And the board at that time made the determination that any large project that was going to be undertaken, we would reopen the interlocal agreement and establish ownership at that time. And so the microwave was ultimately divided, for lack of better terms, ownership-wise, amongst what we call the Big Five, which is the cities of Pasco, Richland, and Kennewick, and Benton County and Franklin County. And between them, that's a $6.5 million project that we're funding over several years. So the other significant engagements, I mentioned the initial back in 2017 with Skeens. In 2021, the board sought the assistance from Delta Works. It was initiated in 2018. I imagine because of COVID and other things that kind of were, towards the tail end of that, starting to ramp up. It didn't actually conclude until 2021, but the goal of that effort was to provide some governance and to help the board establish what would it look like if we were to kind of restructure and again, continue the effort towards either independence or consolidation of both the Benton County Emergency Services Board and what we call the BIPIN board, which is the Bi-County, you're going to test me here, Law Enforcement Information Network. And Chief, if that was wrong, I apologize. It's been a minute. And I'll explain what the difference between those two things are. But what you'll see as we go through here in a minute is they're basically made up of the same groups. And yet right now they're operating as two separate boards and they have different roles. And consolidation and becoming an independent agency would hopefully involve bringing those two groups together to make things a little easier. And then in 2022, Ranke and Associates was hired to provide a strategic plan. What ended up happening is they ended up providing several goals. And I included this quote, and I'll paraphrase it because Mr. Ranke did a great job, except for one of the things he identified was a lack of significant and long-term funding or sustainable funding source. And then staffing challenges and other things make it very difficult to create a strategic plan for an agency that is struggling with some of these important things. And so it ended up being kind of a goal-setting exercise. One of those goals was to hire an executive director, and that was done shortly thereafter. So the City of Richland, as the operating agency, provides all administrative support, and the exception to that is there is an IT department within Benton County Emergency Services, which is separate from the City of Richland. But all recruiting, hiring, all HR functions, all of the Benton County Emergency staff are City of Richland employees. And although Jay was hired by the City of Richland, he was confirmed by the Benton County Emergency Services Board as part of that process. We provide finance and budget, so payroll, and then how the budgetary process works is Jay and his staff will bring a budget recommendation to the Benton County Emergency Services Board, and from that point, they will, vote in support of that, and then it goes ultimately to the City of Richland, and that council finalizes that budget because we have to include it in our larger overall budget for accounting purposes. And then we provide legal risk and safety, and then purchasing and contracting goes through, although there are, everybody knows there's very stringent requirements within state regulations and things. It follows those regulations and in some cases the city's contracting policy because we provide that service. And that's what the 7% administrative fee is intended to be for. So this is a quick side-by-side that shows Benton County Emergency Services and BIPIN. Bi-County Police Information Network, that's what it was. So you'll notice here, one is operated by the City of Kennewick and one is operated by the City of Richland. They serve very different purposes. BIPIN is essentially the law enforcement and jail management, records management system, and they provide support for that. And then the City of Richland provides computer-aided dispatch services, emergency management for Benton County only, and then governance for the 800 megahertz radio, which currently is law enforcement, and then microwave, the current failing VHF radio system, which is, has always been kind of maintained by the City of Richland and Franklin County. And then it talks about that 7% fee again. Now, if you look here in this next slide, these are the members of both boards, and down at the bottom in blue are the only differences. And so these systems, and I have a diagram here in a second that will show kind of how they interact, but they're very interwoven. And sometimes there's the boards from each group that are voting on similar things in meetings that are occurring on different times. And that's been part of the struggle in trying to get some of the things. Everybody knows we're moving in the same direction, but it could just be a lot smoother if we were all consolidated into one. So this is kind of just a graphic that shows what happens. So when our dispatchers get a call, it comes in and they enter the call into a CAD system, which is a computer-aided dispatch. It's sent to police or fire in the jurisdiction in which they are. And from that point, it's communicated via radio from the dispatcher, either on the 800 megahertz system, which is what law enforcement currently uses, or the VHF radio system, which is currently the fire department personnel in the area. From that point, they go down and they continue in CAD as they respond. And then when they're done and the calls are over, there's separate systems that they write their reports in. The red is managed by the fire agencies, in some cases individually for each fire district or fire department for the cities and counties. And then law enforcement and jail systems, their reports are written in the system that is managed by BIPIN. And so you can see how many different groups and agencies, when you talk about fire districts and all the different things that are responsible for different components of our emergency response in Benton and Franklin counties. If it was one independent agency, all of that would likely be consolidated under one and managed by that agency, whatever it was called at that time. And so I'm going to step aside here and let Jay talk a little bit more about BCS and how it's made up, and then I'll come back and we'll wrap things up towards the end. So, thank you.
Thanks, Drew. So, wanted to kind of go over a little bit of what the structure and governance for BCS looks like at a more detailed level. Drew touched on it at the 40,000 foot level. This kind of gives you a little bit better idea at a more granular level. So, as he pointed out, BCS consists of two divisions. First division is CCOM, which is Southeast Communications. That's the 911 dispatch center, and then Benton County Emergency Management. It's governed by a board with representatives from both counties and majority of the cities in the two jurisdictions. And what's interesting is that when you look at the agenda for every board meeting, there are various categories that we address as we go through that agenda, and each one of those has different voting members, and each of those members have different voting rights or power associated with those votes. So anything associated with BCS as a conglomerate, the big five, as Drew pointed out, that's the two counties, Richland, Kennewick, Pasco. Each of those entities have 2 votes each. Benton County Fire District representative, and that person represents both districts 1, 2, and 4. They have 1 vote. Benton City, Prosser, and West Richland, they're also represented, and they have 1 vote each. Anything related to emergency management, that's of course specific to Benton County. So that's Kennewick and Richland, West Richland, Prosser, Benton City. CCOM, which is the 911 function, that is the big 5 again, Prosser, West Richland, and Benton County Fire. The 800 megahertz system currently is only voted on by Kennewick, Richland, and Benton County. The interesting thing there is, as Drew pointed out, almost all law enforcement agencies are on the 800 megahertz system, save for Connell. Part of the county is not able to reach the 800 megahertz system. So Franklin County Sheriff and Pasco PD operate on the 800 megahertz system as well. That's one of the disparities that we'll have to address as we move forward and look at the ILA and look at future management. And then the Benton County microwave system, again, that is voted on only by Kennewick, Richland, and Benton County. As that project progresses, the voting structure and maintenance for that will have to change as well, because that project is now going to involve both Franklin and Benton counties. Currently, the Franklin County microwave system is managed solely by Franklin County IT. So we have some subgroups that help advise the BCS board. The first level is the Strategic Advisory Team, or we call it the SAT team. That's made up of all the regional fire chiefs, police chiefs, and the 2 sheriffs. Basically what their main job is to look at big picture projects, look at other strategic things that they feel like should be recommended to the board. A recent example of it would be related to BIPIN with the records management system. We're evaluating going to a different computer-aided dispatch system to support the record system. The SAT team came together and made a recommendation to the BCS board to not move forward with that CAD change, because the benefit didn't really outweigh the amount of work and just wouldn't have proven out to benefit anybody really in the end. So that's a really prime example and saved probably a couple years of work in that process. Then the next 2 groups below the SAT are what we call customer agency groups, and we have an individual group for both fire and law. Again, representatives from all the agencies come and help out with those two groups. They're dealing with more of the boots on the ground kind of stuff. So service level concerns, anything that's dealing with operations and procedures. And the unique piece with this is that we do dispatch for Walla Walla Fire District 5 as well. And so they have a representative that's part of the fire KEG group. So this kind of gives you an overview of BCS as an organization. So the executive board, with me reporting to the board, I have an administrative assistant. I have 5 managers that help break up the work. So I have an operations manager. She's in charge of all of the dispatch operations. So that includes 2 supervisor positions, 4 dispatch leads, and then 42 dispatch positions, which includes some part-time folks. Communications manager that manages 2 record specialists. She also oversees budget approval and sits on many boards and commissions for at both the state level and a local level, representing BCS's and CCOM's interest on those boards. New position that I created once I got here was a training and employee development manager position. That was something that I identified that was kind of lacking. Our employees really didn't have a whole lot of opportunity for development, and so between trying to keep up on required continuing education and then providing that venue for development so that they could grow in the organization, felt that was going to be key, especially as it relates to retention and our staffing issues that we've been having to address. I got the emergency manager. She's in charge of 2 emergency planners. And then our accounting specialist, which actually helps for the entire organization, she reports directly to the emergency manager. And then as Drew pointed out, we have an IT manager and then a technical systems coordinator and a GIS technician that reports to him. So currently the way that BCS is funded is through annual assessments. So the annual assessments, we create a baseline that's determined by a bunch of different factors. This is really a high-level snapshot, but in essence, fire agencies, we look at a 3-year rolling average of their calls for service, and then there's a charge for that call for service that's applied to that, and then the CPI is a factor as well. For law enforcement, we look at population base for the areas they serve, the number of radios that they use on our system, and then CPI is a factor as well. We also include fund assessments, which is essentially dedicated M&O funds for both the 800 megahertz system and the microwave. And then we have a few direct costs that come into play, and those are specific for various programs that help support the different disciplines. So for instance, PulsePoint, that's an app that fire services use that's for quick response for cardiac arrest and other emergencies. And then Axon, which is a law enforcement specific application. And then in addition to that, we have the other systems and software that has annual maintenance, and everybody shares in the cost of that. This year for 2024, one of the new things that we did was create a capital fund that's solely dedicated for the use of purchasing capital. There has been up to this point, no planning for capital purchases, and so even though it's only $125,000, it's a start. That $125,000 is split amongst all of the agencies or shared as part of their assessment. The fund balance is essentially what we have left over. That amount it includes the required reserves that we have to have on hand to maintain our operation, and then accumulates with any sort of budget excess that we have year after year. So for instance, this last year we had roughly $1.2 million in that fund balance, and about $500,000 to $600,000 of that is part of that required reserve. So we really only had about $600,000 or $700,000 to play with. We do also have a 911 reserve fund as well, but that fund is solely dedicated to anything related to the answering and support of 911 systems. So in this industry, there's a kind of a disparate line between 911 and dispatch, or the radio side of the house. So the next piece to this that ties to that fund balance is what we call expanded programs. So anytime that we have a significant need that we need to address in the budget year, we look at potentially bringing it in as an expanded program. Those expanded programs either have to come out of that fund balance, out of that reserve, or we have to look at a way to get all of the members of the BCS board to agree to split that up and become part of their assessment. And then the last piece, and Drew already touched on this, is a major capital purchase. So the way that we did the first major capital purchase the board agreed to was this microwave system. That was decided to split amongst the big five as a cost share, and then of course supplement that cost with any other means that are available. In this particular case, we did have some congressional directed spending that we applied to this project. Yeah, go ahead. So that leads to this slide here. So the microwave project. So what the microwave system is, it's not what you go home to warm up your leftovers in. This is the system that is the information we call backhaul or transport system that transports data and radio signals from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop and back to dispatch. So whenever somebody keys up a radio, that radio signal goes to one of those towers and then it's rebroadcast through the microwave to each of those sites so that other people on the network can hear that information, receive that transmission. So as I pointed out, we received some CDS grant funds. The total project's coming in at about $6.5 million, excluding tax. We received $2 million in congressional directed spending from 2023. So that's been applied to this project, and that leaves the delta of $4.5 million, which the big five have agreed to split. So what that boils down to is roughly $900,000 to $1 million each, depending on how it all flushes out after tax. Will be each of the entity shares. Go ahead. So as Drew alluded, the next big thing that we have to look at from a capital project perspective is the radio system expansion, and it's been termed a lot of different things. We've called it the VHF system upgrade. We've called it the 800 megahertz radio system expansion. Really, that's probably the better term for it because that's where we landed, was instead of upgrading the antiquated VHF infrastructure, it was recommended based on Federal Engineering, which was a consulting firm hired to look at this project. Their recommendation was don't go down a path of upgrading antiquated technology because you're going to end up in the same place 3 or 4 years from now, and you're going to have, $2 to $5 million in sunk cost, and you're going to be right back to square one. So that's what pushed us to look at this project as expanding the existing Benton County 800 megahertz radio system into Franklin County, which will do two things. It'll allow full coverage of both Benton and Franklin County. It'll improve coverage in both counties in general. So even though the tower sites that we'll add, most of that infrastructure will be in Franklin County, it will benefit Benton County because it improves that overall coverage map because it essentially backfills coverage. So to get this done, to get everybody on that system, we have to do this expansion. We're looking roughly at about $9 million in infrastructure. So by infrastructure, I mean putting radio equipment on mountaintops. The other half of this project, the other $9 million, is roughly what we're guessing it's going to cost to replace all of the radios that the fire service and EMS side of the house are using, and include some of the law enforcement agencies that may not have 800 megahertz radios. They need to switch over as well. The radios that fire service carries today, they're not capable of operating on this band. So that's why we have this big lift to replace all those radios. That includes the radios and all of the apparatus, and then the portable radios that everybody carries on their hip. So in general, and this 18 million right now is a swag based on a rough order of magnitude that Motorola has provided to us based on our best guess of which mountaintops we need to put that gear on. And the radio amount is a rough guess as well. We did a census from all the fire agencies and said, how many radios do you have that we need to replace? Got that number and came up with this, I'll call it a swag. That number could change. So I will say this, so a word of caution is I wouldn't marry ourselves to the $18 million. It might be better, it might be a little worse. It just kind of depends. We currently are trying to seek out about $5 to $6 million in grants. We went after congressional directed spending from fiscal year 2025 for $5 million. And then we also have a couple of other grants that are out specific to buying radios, what we call subscriber units for fire agencies. No word back on any of those. We did get word that we applied for that CDS funding on both sides, the Senate and the House, and it's died on which side?
The House, we just got word that they don't believe it meets the requirements for some of their funding. But I also heard last week from our federal lobbyists that the Senate side is very much alive, and we should hear later this week or next if it's been pushed onto a committee for further evaluation.
So we're hopeful that that comes through. If that does, then if we look at that $18 million, we take $5 or $6 million off of that because we receive those grant funds. Then what's left is that roughly $12 million delta. So the big five, if that's the direction we go again for the split, then all of those agencies would be in a position for cost sharing about $3 to $4 million each. And I probably should add, this project, if it hasn't been conveyed, is very critical at this point. The VHF system literally is hanging by a thread. We're at the point now where we're creating a continuity of operation plan where if aspects of that system die, so we have multiple channels that fire service users are using today. As pieces and parts start to fail, we have basically a drawdown plan to say this channel is no longer really that necessary. So we will shut that channel down. We'll take parts from that channel and use it to help keep other channels alive. And we'll continue that process until we run out of the ability to do that. Parts are just not available. We literally have scoured eBay, Facebook Marketplace, you name it. We've bought used gear from other agencies that have taken down their VHF equipment. So we've really done everything we can, and we're just hoping that it stays alive for long enough for us to get this project up and running. So to add, I guess, insult to injury, some of the capital projects that we see coming down the road, one of the big things that I identified when I got here was that we don't have an at-the-ready backup center, meaning if something should happen to the main building where BCS resides and CCOM resides, there's no place for us to immediately relocate to, essentially turn it up and be able to receive 911 calls and dispatch help to the citizens. We have a plan, but it's kind of a mixed bag of we're taking a Go kit with a laptop computer and then hooking up a desk set and forwarding phone calls to that and using a portable radio to talk on the radio. So it's not ideal. To set something up, we're looking at probably about $4 million. Again, this is a swag. It depends on, if we're taking an existing space and remodeling it, or if we have to build something from the ground up, that could change that number significantly. But that is something that I think, given the risk that we face with Hanford, with potential flooding and other natural disasters, I think that's one of those things that we need to definitely look at. The other issue that we have, and Drew had pointed it out in the history, is that the new building in 1996, well, it's now almost a 30-year-old building. So it's starting to show its age and it's starting to fail. We're at that stage of outgrowing it. So we're faced with having to make some decisions whether we want to expand that building or replace that building. So that's why there's that range of a number there for that. A couple $1 million maybe for a rehab, but it could cost us well more than that if we're going to build a new building and outfit it. And then the last kind of big project there's several, but this is probably the last big one, is looking at a future computer-aided dispatch and records management system upgrade. So the life cycle on most of those is usually 5 to 8 years dependent. We're now, 5 years, I think, into the current RMS JMS that BIPIN serves. So, our users at the SAT level are saying, hey, we need to keep this out in front of us and start thinking about this so that if we need to replace it, we need to get after it. It's one of those things it's going to take a year in evaluation and planning even just to get the purchase of the project kicked off, and then it's another year to 2 years for implementation. So it'll be here sooner than later. So that said, another $2 to $8 million potentially there, depending on the scope.
So one of the questions that I was asked at the Richland City Council is basically how did we get to this point where we have a whole bunch of projects that we have to pay for and in the millions, as you've seen, and don't have a long-term sustainable funding source? And the short answer to that is I don't know. Other than I can tell you that I think that there's always competing priorities, as you all know. The BCS board members have turned over, just from new leadership, I would say almost completely in the last 2 years. And so I think what you have now is an appetite to try to address some of these problems, and not just in the short term, but the long term. I've heard the term kick the can down the road several times. That's probably true to some extent, but I wasn't there. I don't know what the competing priorities were. I don't know what other, difficulties there were at the time. And, but what we want to do is show that we as the city of Richland and as, operating agency for BCS are committed to moving in the direction of having regional dispatch. I can tell you definitively from my experience, I was working in Richland as a police officer when, before Pasco was able to talk on our channels. And when we had large scale events, and the one that comes to mind recently is the one from Fred Meyer in Richland. I think we had 30 or 40 different agencies there, including agencies from Franklin County, Pasco. If you don't have the ability to communicate in a real situation very quickly, it essentially eliminates whoever's there and doesn't have that radio system. And the same is true with fire right now. So bringing this all together is something that I think I would say in my conversations with region representatives is we have the momentum right now to push this in a direction, and we hope that we're able to provide the information so that the city councils or commissions or others who need to make the decisions can do so. So I'm not going to go through this chart again. You can see I made it all the same color. I tend to favor blue because of law enforcement. I couldn't turn the firefighter blue. I just felt wrong about that. I left that for the chief. But the biggest thing for this is improved efficiency. And the only other one I'm going to talk on is the very bottom one there down at the bottom, the authority. The city of Richland is in a unique position, as are the cities, in that we recognize there probably is a long-term sustainable funding source. And I know Councilmember Perales kind of mentioned that he was at a meeting talking about an emergency communications tax in the future. The cities don't have the ability to make that happen if that's a direction that the regions want to go. That's a function of the county. And I know that as of right now, Benton County has said that they are not going to put that on the ballot for this year. And Franklin County, it's still to be determined. And so there's still a lot of work to do there. The hard part is that these radio projects can't wait for that to happen. They need to happen sooner than that because of the failing system. So what I see as the future is kind of moving towards an independent agency. We're going to start putting work into that, drafting interlocal agreements, meeting with the BCS board, trying to come up with a charter. It's possible that some of those things are going to be contract-related services. That authority to tax and other things, if we were to go independent, and for a long time it's been let's get the sales tax potentially and then go independent. And I think what's happening now is you're maybe seeing some appetite to reverse that and to go independent first and then potentially run a sales tax initiative, because you'd be able to run it potentially as a taxing district and wouldn't run into a situation in which it would fail in one county and pass in another, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity. Doable, but that. So right now we're really project specific funding, and we're looking for permanent funding sources so that this can be sustainable and not such a burden through assessments. So with that, I know that was a lot of information and we appreciate your patience. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from council? Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. I know as Councilmember Perales especially, but I think we've all heard a lot of radio chatter about this issue. And even though that really was just an overview, it was really exhaustive, and I appreciate it was time well spent. So, a lot of the questions I even had at the beginning of your presentation were really answered into it. I guess, just some of the nagging thoughts were some of the questions you guys left at the end, as far as, how long is it going to take to get Franklin County and Pasco up to the, 800 megahertz system? And apparently it just sounds like the age old question of money and, making that happen. And so, I suppose at that point, I don't have a lot of questions but rather maybe just a comment. I just groan thinking about creating another taxing district, but on the other hand, obviously there's a need for this infrastructure. It's of paramount, importance for, the agencies to communicate together. Because in all reality, we are one big metropolitan area here, and so if that's the best way of getting it done, obviously it really needs done. And so I guess I would, be behind something like that. So again, thanks for making the trip across the creek tonight and sharing with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw that you had talked about some of these studies and stuff like that, but I just want to make sure. So who's doing the study or the analysis for the improvements that I think Chief Huntington, I was told that he has some type of study.
Are you talking about the upgrade from VHF
For the
to
whole
800?
region, the whole regional.
So the city of Richland has historically operated the VHF system, and then Franklin County on the Franklin County side. And so some time ago, there was an agreement to get together to hire an engineering firm named Federal Engineering. And the benefit to them is that they're a neutral third party. They're not trying to sell any particular product. They're just saying, hey, here's the recommendation of what we believe is best. And they essentially came back and said, we can in good conscience recommend that you do this VHF upgrade. You really need to move in this direction. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, were you gonna?
And I was just gonna add, so Federal Engineering made the recommendation of the direction to go, based on some, their analysis figuring that, from a spectrum perspective, the 800 megahertz system range would be the best. As far as the actual coverage analysis piece goes, we've already engaged Motorola on that part to help us decide where are the key spots that we would need to put the gear on the mountaintops to ensure that we're going to meet. So there were a multitude of metrics that were identified as part of that study that said all the users got together and said, we want better coverage here in specific spots. We want to ensure that, wherever we're standing, we can communicate from a portable radio. We want to look at building penetration, some of those kinds of things, right? So all of those requirements, that's what led Federal down this path of saying, okay, 800 is your best bet for that. But Motorola is really the ones that we're going to have to engage to decide what's that scope look like. And they're in the midst of working all that through, and then we'll have that data to be able to review and look at to ensure that we're getting the coverage that we expect.
And so that study's tailored towards what's needed infrastructure-wise in City of Pasco and Franklin County, because you guys, Benton County already has a lot of this stuff kind of built, right?
Correct.
And so I guess it's frustrating, and you guys have no clue as to why we kind of got here. You said I really don't know, and so I'm just trying to figure out what our piece of the pie is and what exactly needs to be done on our end. And so I was told there was a study that was going to kind of provide, this is how much money really you're going to need for your stuff, but obviously it's a regional thing. And I guess you can do this whole cost splitting thing, because I think right now with the Franklin County commissioners and that presentation, it looks like we may try and figure out our funding, or Franklin County will try and figure out their funding their way. And so I'm just trying to figure out how that, and I've asked, a few times in the meeting, how that's going to affect what's going on regionally.
Yeah, so a lot of the existing infrastructure is in Benton County, obviously. And as Jay talked about earlier, a lot of the new infrastructure for an 800 system would be in Franklin County. The layer of complexity that it would add if Franklin County goes and does the emergency communications tax and it passes is that we would have to figure out a way, and we could, is to make sure that those funds are paying for infrastructure in Franklin County. Knowing that it's all going to work together. One of the major hurdles that we have to come across when it comes to consolidating is every agency in this area that's a big five, we'll just call it that, has little pieces of the pie from an ownership standpoint on different infrastructure. And so does that look like everybody just pushing what they have together and saying this now belongs to BCS? That's probably the path of least resistance. But that's a big ask when you're talking about infrastructure that's worth millions of dollars to different counties and cities. So there's a lot that we have to work through with that.
So I guess how would that work? So let's say we all get together, every entity gets together their money, and then 2 years down the road, you guys are successful in making BCES its own entity. So would you guys be leasing the infrastructure from all the cities? I mean, how does that work?
It's probably going to depend on how it works out in the ILA, and that will all have to be determined prior to it being independent. The last time I tried to do as much digging as I could on some of the historical stuff, and I'll give a shout out to the Richland City Attorney who pulled it all together for me. But that's one of the major issues that made that matrix study not ultimately happen was the division of existing assets. And so it's really going to take the group to come together and say, we all understand we own different parts of this, and the best path forward for law and fire and regional public safety is to say, it may not be completely fair, but we're all going to pool our assets together and say this now belongs to this separate independent agency of Benton County.
One more question. Mr. Atwood said earlier about the voting, and I went through a couple of your guys' the executive board's minutes, and I saw that there was different voting for different categories. And then you had said that in the future we probably need to change the microwave system. It was like Benton County Microwave, but we just signed the third amended ILA back in March, put in money for that project, that $6.5 million project. So why isn't the city of Pasco a voting member currently? I guess now.
So, yeah, the easy answer there is the microwave project, the new one, is not in a place where we can even look at what that cost for maintenance and other aspects are gonna be yet. The existing microwave is all we know, and it's gonna support us for the next couple of years. So that will have to be addressed once we have the new microwave system up and we understand what continuing support and maintenance operation for that system will look like. And then, create that, new fund, for lack of a better term, to operate and maintain that. I think, I may be speaking out of turn, but I think that from the aspect of voting goes, as we move forward, given that, the big five are the ones that put the money into the new microwave system, those would be the entities that would be voting.
Okay.
And, how many votes or how that's parsed out, that remains to be discussed.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing to add there is that the slide you saw about Benton County emergency or the microwave, that is decisions that are being made about the current infrastructure that exists owned in Benton County. With that new ILA, it essentially created a sixth group that will vote on the future of the microwave when that infrastructure is in place.
One more question, Mayor. Sorry, this is definitely interests me since being on the council. So, let's say Franklin County doesn't pass, for us to do a tax, either E911 or communications one, and Benton County decide not to do it. So, you guys are non-politicos, I guess, in a sense. You guys are just trying to do your job, make sure people stay safe. What should we do? I mean, do we allocate funding through our budgets? I mean, $20-some million, we don't know if it's going to stay the same. What do you guys suggest we do? Because I was kind of curious. couldn't believe that Benton County didn't want to do the sales tax. I mean, Kittitas County just did theirs and they passed. It seems like it'd be a slam dunk, but I understand kind of where we live in this little. What do you guys believe? If you guys don't want to get into that, that's fine. But I just coming from you guys. I mean, you're saying this is time is of the essence, and it seems like again we are trying to just kick the can down the road.
Yeah, I'll just say this: I've been in the BCS board meetings for the better part of a couple of years now. Prior to Jay sitting in this seat, I kind of acted as an interim role for about 8 months in that position while we were hiring him, and got fairly, good idea of kind of where the board members sat. And that board is made up of 2 county commissioners, and then the city managers from the 3 cities, and then there's representatives from the fire districts, et cetera. But what I think the board understands is exactly what you said, Councilmember Perales, is we can't not do nothing, if that makes sense. We have to do something. And by doing nothing, that really is a decision, right? It's not a decision to do nothing. It's a decision to not make some of these harder decisions. And so I think there's going to have to be a conversation with that big 5 to say, how are we going to fund this 800 megahertz radio system, knowing that we don't have that emergency communication sales tax available right now.
I think I would add too, I might be going on a limb. I don't think, from what the conversations that have been had around that tax, I don't think it's that Benton County doesn't want to do it. It's just the timing of it right now. So like I think that's why we had on that slide, to be determined with that. I think the other thing with this is that we do have other options to deal with the price that we're talking about. Motorola offers in-house financing that can be stretched out over a 10-year term. We looked at that as a potential option for the microwave project, but the board ultimately decided, no, let's just split that 5 ways and essentially pay cash. But had we financed that, we could have financed that $4.5 million out over a 10-year span. And the liability for us as an agency that would have to be, shared with all of our member agencies was roughly $600,000 or $700,000 annually. So it makes it a much more palatable bite to take, so to speak. So there are some other options that we can pursue. It's, we don't all have to just say everybody's gonna have to throw $3 or $4 million on the table right away. So, those are conversations that we're gonna have to have.
Appreciate it. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Harpster.
Yeah, thanks for coming out this evening. Can you, several slides ago, you were talking about this, the 7% administrative fee and what that was for. Can you just speak to that again? I didn't catch exactly what it was for.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not able to advance it now. But essentially, that's for providing all of the administrative support. So the city does all of the HR functions, legal, risk and safety, procurement, budgeting and payroll, all that things. And those BIPIN, which is the other group that I talked about, has the same 7% administrative fee. And I can't remember, but I believe there's also one, at least on the Benton County side, for some of the jail-related administration. So I'm not sure about the Franklin County side, but it's covering essentially the business operations and support of the agency.
And that 7%, is that 7% of the 2024 budget, the 7.3?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's of the existing budget on an annual basis.
Okay. And then with regards to expanding coverage, what percentage, give or take, of Franklin County is not currently covered for the 800 megahertz?
So reliably covered, the majority of North Franklin County. I mean, so the Pasco proper is covered fairly well, and coverage does, sneak north a little bit. I couldn't tell you exactly where that line is, but it's, well short. We did some preliminary, we called it building penetration testing with the existing infrastructure just to see where we could reach and how well the system worked. We were able to get some communication on a mobile radio, which is the radios mounted in a car, up in Connell and some of those north parts of the county. However, and that's only due to the fact that they're a higher power radio than what your portable radio is, right? So, that's not sufficient for day-to-day operational coverage. So that's where the focus is. But the benefit, so even though the majority of the infrastructure would reside in Franklin County, it creates a backfill for both Benton and Franklin County. And what you have to remember too is that all the fire users in Benton County are on VHF. They would be migrating to the 800 megahertz system as well. So this is a multi-factor benefit process. It's not just benefiting Franklin or any specific agency. It's benefiting the entire region, candidly.
And I think the key to that is reliable communications. It's like you could go to North Franklin County now and connect or have some type of conversation via radio, but it's just not reliable.
Sure. Okay. Capital projects. So the estimated shared costs split between the big fives, 3 to 4 million each. And so then, sort of an ignorant question, but my understanding read through this is Pasco is not one of the big five, correct?
They are.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
We are not?
You are.
Oh, we are. Okay.
Yes.
I guess for those who are not part of the big five, then what would the financial ask of those partners be if the big five is going to cover, the huge majority of it?
Yeah, so it's certainly not lost on us that some of the, particularly the small fire districts, even buying a couple of subscriber radios at $5,000 to $6,000 each is a heavy lift, and they don't have the type of revenue that cities and counties do. So one of the things that I think we need to make a decision of, and the board has had this conversation on numerous times, is what does it look like? Are the big five just going to come together and say, we're going to own this essentially, or through capital and such, and own the infrastructure? At that point, I guess it's safe to say that there would probably be some subsidizing costs for the smaller fire districts and other things. All of that would have to be worked through in the ILA for any independent agency, or an ILA in the existing situation when we're going to that. But I think the appetite, if I'm reading the tea leaves right from the board, is that they're more interested in getting it done and having the big five be the primary capital funding sources. So.
What are, I know you mentioned needing to expand it. What are some of the limiting factors with the current facility? You mentioned, 30 years old. My initial thought would be, do remodels, expansions to try to save money, especially with the crisis that we're in. What's really driving the need there?
I don't know that there's a preference one way or another to go new building versus not. I just think that there's a need to look at what that looks like.
Or something.
Yeah. The one thing about the Warm Redundant Backup Center that I would say is, we just did a Columbia Generating Station exercise, which emergency management does regularly. And what I know from that is very little other than depending on which way the plume happens to be going in a tragic, situation like that, that building may not be a place that we can be. And so not just kind of technical diversity, but real geodiversity would be a huge benefit to the region so that there was a place that we could dispatch 911 from.
Okay. To your point there at the end, I would think I would be in favor of BCS becoming its own separate entity and then having a measure go to the ballot to acquire funding. To me, that seems like the simpler, cleaner, long-term solution. Ensuring that agencies are working together instead of, like Councilman Perales mentioned, I've heard the Franklin County Commissioners kind of wanting to do their own thing. And that kind of scares me. It seems a lot riskier to have each agency do their own thing and try to still make it all work regionally. And so just to kind of summarize, is there a specific ask tonight, or is it just sort of an update and let us sort things out?
This is simply an update,
Okay.
and we wanted to make sure everybody had the information.
So the reason that we're kind of doing this is that when we did bring the ILA forward and opened it back up, we were getting feedback that, for instance, this council as a signing body on that ILA, they weren't really sure what it was that they're signing.
Gotcha.
And so this is kind of that chance for us to get out and reinforce what it is that we're doing and why we're coming forward with these asks, and that way you're better informed.
Okay, thanks again for coming up.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and appreciate the information. I'm sure you'll be back with more, and we'll stay tuned for that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is hearings and council action on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. Got one item, which is item A. It's public hearing on 2025 to 2030 transportation improvement plan, and it looks like Mr. Gonzalez is going to kick us off here.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Tonight was advertised and scheduled as a public hearing. It's an opportunity for the public to provide input to all of us as we prepare the annual transportation improvement program. As we shared last week, this is a annual requirement that identifies projects throughout the city that are consistent with our adopted comprehensive plans and various studies. The projects, part of the list, are intended to be accommodating of all modes of transportation, so vehicle, freight, bicycle, and pedestrian as well. There's an annual deadline of July 1st, and then after that, we file the paperwork with the Secretary of Transportation. The list, as it's been shared with council so far, is a significant decrease from previous years. As discussed at the last meeting, the 24-29 TIP had roughly 77 projects. This year, the preliminary list has 50 projects. 10 of those projects are new, and these projects cover everything from pavement preservation to intersection improvements, access for pedestrians and bicycles, and numerous safety improvements. The estimated cost, and it's a number that's being worked on right now, so this is not confirmed, but the estimated cost of the list is roughly $261 million. This covers all 50 projects throughout the city, with various funding sources from secured and planned grants, local funds, and private contributions. We did want to highlight some of the proposed additional projects. There's 10 of those, and those we've called out specifically in tonight's presentation. These projects include the Lewis Street Pavement Preservation Project. That's a preservation project from US 12 to 27th Avenue. Another preservation project is one on Ainsworth Avenue, which runs from Oregon Avenue to 10th Avenue. The Lewis Street Underpass demolition, this is part of the ongoing work as they wrap up the Lewis Street Overpass project. The Interstate 182 and Broadmoor Boulevard interchange improvements, and a new program to address gaps in the transportation system for pedestrians and bicycles. So it's identifying areas where those gaps exist and identifying projects to improve the infrastructure in those along those areas or corridors. The other 5 projects include a neighborhood traffic calming program. This has been one that's been shared with staff and council numerous times over the past couple of years. So identifying projects throughout the city to address safety and calming measures. A comprehensive safety action plan, citywide safety improvements associated with that program. A citywide injury minimization and speed management implementation. So that's some more safety improvements. Intersection improvement at Commercial Avenue and Karshner Street. That's obviously an area that's experiencing rapid industrial growth. And then a sign reflectivity analysis and implementation. So an analysis and upgrades for stop signs in particular across the city to make sure that they're still in the right, that they're still up to code essentially. We did include in the presentation the full list. These are part of the staff report and are also available, will be available shortly online as we develop that website to receive public input and comment throughout the process. So these are all the projects, and we shared these with council last week, and I'm happy to talk about any of them in particular if there's any questions, but really wanted to focus on the public outreach efforts available to the public. We have 3 formal open houses scheduled over the next week and a half, beginning on June 5th, with an open house opportunity at Cafe Con Arte that's located downtown. We'll be there from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. There will also be an open house on June 6th at Kurtzman Park. That'll be from 5 to 7 o'clock. And then next week, we'll be at Delta High School, June 11th from 5 to 7 o'clock. We were able to coordinate with the Pasco School District to share information about this effort to increase outreach. Our social media and our communications teams have been out promoting the open houses. Staff is working on the information available on our city website to make sure that there's plenty of information available and opportunities for the members of the community to provide comment via that. I was able to share information this morning on 610 KONA AM radio station about the improvement plan along with the open houses. So really, staff's really trying to beef up essentially the outreach opportunities available for the public as we develop this annual program. And as part of tonight's presentation, just wanted to open up the public hearing, get feedback. We want to make sure that this list is representative, obviously, of what council's vision is for the transportation projects across the city, but also give community members ample opportunity to provide input. In terms of the anticipated project schedule, we were here last week, obviously, introducing the TIP. Tonight, opening up the public hearing. We did send out an advertisement to conduct a special public hearing that'll take place next Monday. And then the intent is to come back on June 17th with an opportunity to share with council what we hope is a near final list of projects based on dialogue and input guidance from City Council, taking into any account information, ideas, concerns, comments, input from members of the community throughout the next couple of weeks, and bring back a list for council to make a decision on June 17th. If at that time there's still additional information and comments, concerns, questions, or ideas as to be considered as part of the list, staff's prepared to work to issue a special meeting at June 24th, where we'll bring that back, addressing all final comments associated with the TIP. So really just an opportunity for us to bring this back in front of council, get this out in front of the community, and both myself and Director Sarah, happy to answer any questions you have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Before we open the public hearing, do we have any questions or comments from City Council? Mr. Perales.
Yeah, I just been getting a lot of feedback about just certain projects on the list about moving them up. To be honest, got a lot of residents calling me a lot about Burden Boulevard, Road 60, Burden, Boulevard, Madison Avenue. And then also I've gotten a lot of emails about the Court Street improvements from Road 96 to Harris, that those projects, in their opinions, that they should be moved up. And obviously they live around those areas and they feel like they're big safety concerns. So I just wanted to kind of get that on the record and let those people that they were, know that they were heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perales. Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously we're a growing city, construction cones everywhere, but like Councilmember Perales said, want the public to know that we take this very seriously. I mean, these are some tough decisions we all have to make, like balancing this with the presentation we just had. I'm thrilled that staff was able to get the state to work on the interchange and the loop ramp open today there at Broadmoor and able to accommodate that northbound traffic. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm just hoping that we hear from the public from these meetings. And one of the things that did come up, not to answer for staff, but in our meeting we had this afternoon was just because something is lower down on the list doesn't mean like it's a last priority. The ones that have the most funding are going to be near the top that are ready to go. And, I think you put it well, Councilmember Perales, that, the projects that are most important to us, we're going to all look at a list like that and wonder where we are at on that list and, hoping that it's more of a priority. But, yes, kind of like you put it, for the sake of the public, that just because it's on the list, I guess that's the point, not so much where it's at on there. We just got to work with staff and go out and get funding for this and just keep improving our city. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Seeing no further lights from council, the public hearing is now open. We'll limit comments to 2 minutes per person. The time will be there. So if we have any public comments, going once, Ms. Francis. We're on.
Is it on? Rebecca Franzik, Basin Disposal. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I can't tell you how excited I am about your new road projects. I know it's inconvenient to have all those cones, but I'm driving on a lot of those new roads and they are improved. My request of you tonight is, will you please remember, as you talk about traffic calming and narrowing streets, that you have very large garbage trucks that have to go by once a week. And our drivers have some fairly serious concerns about the Sylvester Street corridor. Just wondering how calm people are going to be when they stop to pick up garbage and the whole lane is blocked. So just, if you'd keep that in mind for future planning, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you for that feedback. Do we have any additional public comment? Going twice? Going third? Okay. Now, as I understand, typically I would close the public hearing, but we have a second date of next week. We're not continuing this, or?
Separate public hearing.
Okay. Just want to make sure it was separate.
You betcha.
With that, our public hearing on the 2025 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Plan is closed. With that, we'll move on to item number 9, which is ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. With that, we have 2 items. Item A is quasi judicial matter that we're going to hear. Ordinance number 4715, Glacier Park, number 2, rezone from C1 to C3. That's number Z2023-014. And that's going to come from Mr. Gonzalez, and then, or Mr. Ferguson.
Yeah, I'll start out with the script, and then we'll get to Mr. Gonzalez and let him have all the fun. This is a quasi-judicial hearing proceeding, which is to render a final decision on the materials that are presented. It's defined as a proceeding in which the council defines the legal rights, duties, and privileges of specific parties in a hearing, proceeding, or other contested proceeding. The appearance of fairness doctrine applies, and the hearing must be fair in 3 respects: form, substance, and appearance. All council members should consider whether they have potential conflicts as follows. A demonstrated bias for or against any of the parties. B, any direct or indirect financial interest in the outcome of the proceeding which would affect the council member personally, whether there has been any prejudgment of the issues prior to hearing the facts. D, whether there has been any ex parte contact with anyone other than staff prior to this hearing. And finally, E, any conflict which a council member believes would prevent them from hearing this matter fairly and impartially. If any council member has any of these concerns or disclosures, now would be the time to make those known.
Mr. Yeah, all right, my light's on. Mr. Harpster.
Yeah, I'll just disclose that I have an indirect financial interest in the outcomes of the proceedings for this item, so I'll be recusing myself.
Okay, we'll send someone back when we're done.
Okay, and are there any members of the public seeking to disqualify a member of council from participating in the proceedings? Seeing none, please proceed.
All righty. Mr. Gonzalez, you want to kick it off?
Yep. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This evening, we have a recommendation from the hearing examiner for approval regarding a zoning petition. As a general reminder, requirements for zoning petitions are identified and outlined in the municipal code under Title 25-210-030. And generally, that criteria that must be met for a favorable recommendation from the examiner are basic information, the date the existing zone became effective, identifying the changed conditions to warrant additional zoning, facts to justify that change based on the advancing of public health, safety, general welfare, the effect it will have on value and character of adjacent properties, and the adopted city comprehensive plan land use designations for the property, and such other information that the examiner requires. The hearing examiner conducted a public hearing back in February. On February 14th, the hearing examiner did make a determination, a recommendation of approval. A SEPA, the State Environmental Policy Act determination, did not consist of any mitigations associated. This is a land use or zoning only action. There's no project associated with this. Some information about the site itself. On the screen, you'll see the general area, and it's outlined in red. And within that red is a subset of approximately 3.3 acres on the southeastern side along the intersection of Burns Road and Ochoco Lane. The current comprehensive plan land use is mixed residential and commercial. That land use accommodates a variety of residential and commercial uses. The existing zone is C1, which accommodates retail businesses. The proposed zone, as recommended by the examiner, is R3, which is a medium-density residential land use. Staff, as part of the staff report to the examiner, identified the criteria and found it to be in alignment with the adopted comprehensive plan and the adopted standards. The examiner recommended approval of the rezone, and staff adds that the zone is consistent with the adopted goals and policies of the Pasco Comprehensive Plan. And concurs with the examiner's recommendation. So with that, happy to answer any questions from council this evening about this zoning petition. Thank you.
Sounds good. Do we have any questions or comments from staff or from council? Sorry, Mr. Prowse.
I just have a few. So the applicant wants this whole site to be R3. That's what he's asking.
Essentially, yeah, the whole site already has the residential zoning district. This would amend the small southeastern portion, which it's not identified on the parcel that's there because it's not parceled out yet, but there's a southeastern corner of the site at the intersection of where Burns and Ochoco Lane is. That roughly 3.5 acres is the subject of the zoning petition, and that would change it to R3 if approved tonight.
And he rezoned, I think I was reading there, he rezoned this back in 2023?
Yes, this site was a part of a land use amendment back in 2022. There was zoning changes on the surrounding site. This would match this smaller subset with the surrounding site.
So my follow-up to that was, I was kind of, I don't know, to me, it didn't make any sense why this land use in that area would be mixed residential, commercial. I mean, right across its homes. And, you know, a school would kind of make sense, and, you know, then there's kind of like some rural living. It just didn't really make any sense. So I guess I was just, for my sake, was why was that site designated for land use for mixed residential commercial at one point?
Yeah, the mixed residential commercial land use has found itself to be, I think, one of the more popular and favorable land uses, considering that it accommodates quite a bit of flexibility. It allows you to do everything from an R1 to an R4 residential development. It also accommodates commercial and office uses, which provides opportunities for retail, small businesses, commercial services, et cetera, and which obviously provides opportunities to shorten proximity to those destinations for residential neighborhoods. But it saves quite a bit of time for potential development to kind of skip an unnecessary step with the land use amendment, given that the land use already accommodates a variety of residential or commercial zoning districts. So it is helpful in that aspect, and we found it to be quite popular amongst our developer stakeholder group over the last several years.
And since there's been so much kind of action on this site, was there an archaeological survey done during the last rezone? Because it seems, I think that was a stipulation that one would have to be done again, or one needs to be done.
Yeah, so if and when a project is proposed for this site, staff will evaluate that, and that's when that level of detail, at least for the environmental consideration, would be conducted at the project level, not at the land use or zoning petition level.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comment of council? Seeing none, this isn't a public hearing, correct? Yep. So with that, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote with the absence. Oh yeah, let's do a motion. Let's do that. Sorry, it's been a long day.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 4715, amending the zoning classification of certain real property located northwest of the intersection of Burns Road and Oco Lane, Pasco, Franklin County, Washington, from C1 to R3, and further authorize publication by summary only.
Second.
I heard two voices. Ms. Blaisdell, second that. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, Ms. Tippy.
Moment.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Just think it'd be nice that way we can note Mr. Harpster.
Okay, Councilmember Perales,
Yes.
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Blaisdell,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimm,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne,
Yes.
and Mayor Serrano.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. We go grab Mr. Harpster. Thank you very much for that. All right. Moving on to item letter B, resolution number 4459, allowing Medicare Part B premium reimbursement for Leoff 1 retirees. And Ms. Mattson, we'll hear from you.
I hope this works. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss a topic regarding our LEF 1 and the potential reimbursement of Medicare Part B premiums. Staff is recommending approval of the presented resolution to reimburse Medicare Part B premiums for our LEF 1 retirees. As many of you know, RCW 4126 outlines our obligations to provide medical services to our retired law enforcement officers and firefighters. While the current law mandates that we cover necessary medical services not payable from other sources, it does not explicitly require us to reimburse Medicare Part B premiums. However, this reimbursement is a step that can significantly benefit both our retirees and the city. Reimbursing Medicare Part B premiums is a move to manage our financial responsibilities effectively. If our LEF 1 retirees would choose not to enroll in Medicare Part B, the city would need to cover potentially higher out-of-pocket expenses such as doctor visits and outpatient treatments, which are likely to be more costly than the premiums for Medicare Part B. By reimbursing these premiums, we can ensure our retirees have continuous and comprehensive medical coverage while mitigating the risk of incurring these higher expenses. Staff estimates that the annual cost of reimbursing the premiums would cost approximately $42,000, which we believe would be a lower cost compared to the potential medical costs we could face. Moreover, staff has discussed with peer cities, and Pasco is currently the only city in the area that is not participating in this reimbursement. Approving this resolution will not only align us with the practices of our neighboring cities, but also demonstrate our commitment to the well-being of our retired public safety officers. By taking this step, we can provide essential support to our Left One members and manage the city's financial obligations more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any Councilwoman Barajas?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to staff and to you, our new HR person, for bringing this forward. It took maybe 3 years to get this in front of us. And again, there were some changes in staffing. This was initially brought to us by, he's now passed, Mr. Albie Covington. So many thanks to him and his family for all the service to Pasco, to the Tri-Cities. But again, thank you for bringing this forward. I was going to say finally, but I'm happy to see this. Again, 3 years in the making, a lot of staff changes, but I'm happy to see this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Mr. Milne.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman Barajas, for advocating for this. I know Mayor Serrano and myself, we also talked about it, and we felt it was the right thing to do. So just want to say thank you to staff, and thank you for pushing this forward, and I believe we'll all be hopefully in favor of this. But I just want to give a big kudos because we had quite a discussion a couple months ago, and now it's already on the agenda. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4459, allowing Medicare Part B premium reimbursement for LOF 1 retirees.
Second.
Got a motion and a second from Ms. Barajas. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Excellent. That moves us on to item number 10, unfinished business. We've got 2 items here. Ordinance number 4716, Water Rights Subcommittee recommendation to amend Pasco Municipal Code, or PMC, sections 13.15.030 and 13.45.060, and Deputy City Manager Sigdell will kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and evening council. This is an item that has been in your docket for quite some time. It is the revision of our water rights PMC sections, specifically revising some of the items that were passed late last year. Next slide, please. We had a water rights subcommittee that included Councilmember Charles Grimm and Leo Polaris, and our objective was to look at all of the current water right codes and look at the current and emerging issues, as well as propose amendments to the larger council, especially with input from the public. We brought all of the changes to the changes recommended by the subcommittee. Next slide, please. And the recommendations were essentially to remove the 10 years retroactive element. That was a big feedback from the public, and evaluating the water rights in lieu fees every 2 years, as well as exploration of water conservation programs. The ordinance that is in front of you, you will see that you will see the first 2 bullets there incorporated within our municipal code. Staff is also creating a water conservation program and presenting to council here in near future. While we're working on that, we're also taking some concrete actions of making sure that we're including that within your council goals, within staff's work plan for this year, for this biennium, as well as looking into funding to be able to do a proper water conservation programs. For example, some of the items that we have put into the draft legislative ask are irrigation timers, so we're not having to go in and turn off and turn on water for city facilities, especially the big parks that we water quite a bit, and other programs like that. So we're working through the water conservation program. One item that you will see, there are not any one of these recommendations or some housekeeping items that staff has talked with some water right experts and make sure that our language is strong and that there's ample space there to protect the city in terms of water rights transfer, which I'm finding out is an extremely complicated process anytime it happens. And so there's an understanding of how much water rights a person has had over the years, but really it's up to Department of Ecology to then give that ultimate determination of how much they view as certificated water right is at the time of the transfer. So we're not going to do that for every small transfers, but definitely for big transfers, we would have to do a little bit more due diligence, and the language added allows space for the staff to do so at the time of the transfer. And with that, I'm open to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Sigdal. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to thank staff for their work on this. I met with individuals, I met with groups, I met with Councilmember Perales a couple times on our subcommittee, individuals, and I guess I want to say that this is the right step forward, but this isn't done. Water, dealing with water issues is not going to go away. This is going to be with us. And like I recently shared, it's something I talk to my kids about, that this is going to be ever more urgent just as time goes on. But again, I do appreciate staff's work with this. It was a joy to work with Councilmember Perales on this. And though this doesn't resolve, I think, every issue or put this to bed forever, I think it is a great step in the right direction. I look forward to passing these revisions tonight. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Perales?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, I just want to thank staff. This has been, 7 months of work, but, I think we found common ground and came to a good consensus on these recommendations, and it's a good step forward because, when you start these things and you start dissecting this stuff and you want to change everything, you just got to come together and find out what's good for our community. And in regards to water rights, we're just not, talking the talk, but we're walking the walk on this. And like Councilmember Grimm said, this issue's not going to go away, but I like what these recommendations, and I like the language. I went through it, and staff answered my questions, and I'm glad that we have experts in regards to this issue on speed dial. And again, I think this is a good group of recommendations for this city going forward. So I put my support behind this, and I hope everyone else passes this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perales. Mr. Harpster?
Yeah, appreciate the additional work that went into this. And as someone who works in the development community and attended all the meetings sorry, I'm getting this mixed up with a different item there. I didn't attend any meetings. But as somebody who works in the development community, the changes to me make sense. The changes that were passed make sense and benefit all the stakeholders. Even without water, there's not going to be any development. The only one at the time in October, November, when this came up that I didn't think made sense was the 10-year retroactive change. And so, again, just wanted to express my support for the change tonight, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comment here? Seeing none, Mr. Milne?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 4716, amending the Pasco Municipal Code section 13.15.030, connection outside city limits water rights, section 13.45.060, assignment of water rights, extension of city water services beyond city limits, and further authorized publication by title only.
Second.
I hear a motion from Mr. Milne, a second from Mr. Graham. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Moving along to item B, Boys and Girls Club of Benton and Franklin Counties ARPA allocation. This is another one from Deputy City Manager Sigdal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is an item that we're revisiting as well. This is a question to Council in terms of reallocation of $1.26 million of ARPA funds to Boys and Girls Club remodeling of a city facility that is leased to Boys and Girls Club for the last 25 plus years. And we also recently extended the lease for that facility for another 20 years. The next slide, please. These are the allocations for ARPA funds overall. The city has received about $17.4 million. There's a couple $100,000 missing in this allocation that we need to rebalance. Next slide, please. The very last one. One more, thank you. One of the things that I wanted to make clear with council is the MLK budget, since we will be, if council approves, we will be taking this $1.26 million from the MLK budget to the Boys and Girls Club. And there were some questions around what happens to budget for MLK. So I wanted to make sure that this was included in here. So you'll see a breakdown, some from our federal agencies, state, and then ARPA, which I just put that as a standard one, which is $2.5 million that we had already allocated for MLK. And then this additional amount, which is the $1.26 million, is on top of that $2.5 million. So I don't think I was clear on that as I was communicating that in the past. So I wanted to make sure there was more clarity as we're presenting today. So if you were to include the $1.26 million of this ARPA funding in question, then the MLK budget is about $7.7 million. If you remove that, then you're looking at about $5.5 million. Is it enough for MLK? Very, very likely not. These are all monies that we had requested from our federal and state agencies pre-COVID, and COVID dollars. Inflation has really eaten up on what we had asked and received. And overall, the idea of the building overall, there is. We do not know for sure how much the budget for MLK is going to be at this time, but at this time, 7.7 million is what is allocated, and that includes the 1.26. And with that, I'm open to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Sigdal. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, we did get an email that folks may have positions on this. Can I get a raise of hands if anyone's here to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing none. We'll not open that as a new opportunity. With that, seeing no comments from council, Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the allocation of ARPA funding of $1.26 million to the renovation of the city-owned facility that houses the Boys and Girls Club in Pasco.
I'll second that. I can do that, right? Okay. I know it's not common for a mayor too, but why not throw a wrench in it every once in a while? Okay, so with that, Mr. Milne made a motion. I made a second. Ms. Barajas.
Mayor, I'll be abstaining from this.
Okay. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to walk back, or do you just want to abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, let's go ahead and do a voice vote. Note that Ms. Barajas' abstention.
All right.
Or, excuse me, a roll call.
Councilmember Blaisdell,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimm,
Yes.
Councilmember Harpster,
Yes.
Councilmember Perales,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne,
Yes.
and Mayor Serrano.
Yes.
That's 5.
5-1 with
Five,
one
yep.
abstention.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, with that, it passes. Moving along to item number 11, we've got new business. I see a head shake, which is equivalent to a no. With that, we'll move on to miscellaneous discussion, which is item number 12. Council member Blaisdell.
We got one thing for miscellaneous, if that's all right, Mayor. Just a kind of celebration, if Ms. Sarah wants to talk us through what we're about to watch.
Good evening. So you're gonna see the first drive through the newly opened ramp of I-182 heading northbound on Broadmoor. So that is heading eastbound on the interchange, in the interstate. And you wanted to go north on Broadmoor. Now you no longer take the old ramp, you take the new ramp. And this is what it looks like, and it's sped up, so do not drive this fast. Okay, because it's awkward when we're in silence. I wanted to note that this project actually got approval from DOT to be constructed merely a year and 2 months ago. So it was April of 2023 that we got approval on our planning documents, and design and construction have occurred at a record speed. The project is not complete, but the ramp is open. You will still expect to see some work here on the top of the bridge where the roundabout is still being completed.
I will say I took it, and it was nice. I watched a bunch of people still sitting in queue. I backed up almost to the bridge, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to hit the middle lane and cut over, and probably save 5 minutes plus on my commute. So hopefully folks will start to see the signs. Hopefully for a while we can keep up those, maybe the digital signs, and just, hey, it's open now. You know, treat it like a fast food store or something like that, right? Now open. With that, thank you very much, staff, for the work on this project. We know it was no light lift, and it's hopefully going to be tremendously beneficial to the growth in that area. With that, Ms. Blaisdell, I will go back to you.
Thank you. Last week I had asked for council goals and quality of life for the downtown bathrooms to be added. So I went through the downtown master plan, and I did not see bathrooms in the downtown master plan. Can you elaborate a little bit? Am I missing it, or?
Thanks for the question, council member. And Mr. Gonzalez can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only maybe highlight that was in there had to do with the bathrooms that existed at Peanuts Park already. So there wasn't anything else that was additional in that document that spoke to bathrooms. Was there anything else that you saw in there?
No, safety and access came up quite a bit throughout the discussions with the public on the downtown master plan, but specific references to implementation of new measures for facilities were not included in the downtown master plan.
So
Okay.
if that is something that council wants us to add, we can certainly look into that further.
I would like to put bathrooms as not just downtown, but as our parks are visited frequently, because I know it's an ongoing issue with homelessness and in downtown the businesses. I would like to look at the bathroom issue closely for a better solution than where we're currently sitting.
I think one thing that staff would like probably better direction on is, did the Portland Blue, was that something that was of interest? Because I think that's the best alternative that we've found so far. Jesse can correct me if I'm wrong, but because of the ability to have it somewhat open air, ability to clean it readily, and the inability to burn it down, I think is some of the positives that it had going for it, though the price tag was not insignificant.
Well, I do like it as an option, but the price tag is pretty spendy. But if there's alternatives other than that, I would like to look at all possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blaisdell. I guess to the extent that you're soliciting feedback there, maybe if there's opportunity for grants, I mean, maybe there's a homeless place that will help us furnish bathrooms, you know? plenty of those in Seattle that get money, so they can send it here. Your light was on, it's off.
I have nothing. For
Okay.
This.
Okay. I don't know that this is just pertaining to this.
Yeah, just a
Okay,
quick
Ms.
question.
Barajas, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question, follow-up question on Councilwoman Blaisdell's question in regard to the bathrooms. My understanding is that even at the parks, the bathrooms are closed most of the time, but there are porta potties. Is that not correct?
Depending on which park, we've tried this year to keep the bathrooms open as much as we could, and we've been fairly successful. But in a lot of the parks in our downtown area, we do have porta potties available as well. And they are used and sometimes can be problematic and create issues as well. And unfortunately are sometimes burnt to the ground.
Okay, so my question, I guess, is just a follow-up in regards to specifically the downtown. There are not any porta potties currently out there?
No, not currently in the Peanuts Park area, and it's because we had such a problem with them last year that we ultimately had to remove them after discussion. And they can be implemented, and we can try them out again if BDI is willing to place them.
That would be good until we figure out the funding for something else.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess where I'm at on it, I just want to see where the Supreme Court comes down on Grants Pass versus Johnson. I know it's not directly related, but it is kind of indirectly related to the issue. And then seeing how staff and law enforcement and everything, how that all shakes out and how that becomes part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess, Ms. Barajas, were you making any type of motion on that, or are you trying to, do you want to push that forward? Obviously, you're expressing your opinion, but are you
Correct.
seeking?
I'm just expressing an opinion. I was just seeking information in regards to where we're at with porta potties, just because in the past there has been porta potties readily available. But we've also received reports that they've been vandalized, burned down, a lot of other stuff going on in there. And so it's not safe for staff that are out there cleaning them, or, it's replacing them is costly as well. So the direction, I guess, if there's any direction coming from me, would be to let's look into what options there are that are not as costly.
Okay. Go ahead. What? Oh, sorry, you mumbled something.
No.
Okay, Mr. Harpster, your light's on, so.
Not related to any of that. With the Broadmoor Loop, congrats on getting that done. I was frustrated last week when there was a post about, hey, it's gonna be opening up soon, a post on Facebook. There was like 150 comments and everybody was complaining, is the G-rated word, about it. I'm like, what in the world? Like, it's just so frustrating. So congrats to staff on getting that done. And what else is frustrating is, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, everybody wants to moan and complain about traffic stuff, and then Ms. Francic is the only person to speak tonight during public hearing. And so I no longer want to listen to traffic complaints, so I'll send it to you, Director Sarah. The only other thing was, we had talked, I think it was last week, on having a mini retreat to discuss just two topics: rules and goals. And I know Mr. Mayor, you weren't here, but I would really love if we could do that at a workshop meeting, which is what the intended workshop meeting's for. Last week I said, yeah, it would be great to do a mini retreat. And then I thought about it and looked at my calendar, and if we could change direction to staff and do that at a workshop meeting, that would be so much appreciated. And look, I'm always happy to spend as much time as we need on council stuff during the week, but we've also got 4 meetings scheduled each month that if we could fit that into, that'd be ideal. And so just wanted to put that out to council, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Harpster. I guess weighing in on that, you said that's it. You
Sorry.
said that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Just what? Sorry, you said it like
I was
on
getting
it.
ready to respond.
Okay. Just to that end, I would certainly support if we could roll anything into official meetings if possible. I think it's also beneficial to we're here, public's here, might as well do it.
Is there
Unless there's a
any,
concern from
is there any
staff.
interest in starting a little earlier to accommodate that if there's a full agenda night? I understand tonight's going pretty well, but if that's something that you'd entertain, we can send out an email to the council and just kind of feel if there's a day that we start at 6 o'clock perhaps to front load that conversation and then move on to the rest of the agenda. I see nodding heads.
Yeah, I
so-
think that's I guess, I'll let others who have different opinions, I think that makes sense. If we need to start early to achieve the goals or address some
look at
type
the
of
agenda.
rules of decorum and what have you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
So, I see no further lights. With that, I see no executive session. Okay, I can read sometimes. And with that, number 14 is our favorite part, which is adjournment. It is now 9:00, we'll just call it 9:05 because I'll talk for another second. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.